So we have to be straightforward without being hurtful. And here is why I believe that candor is important. Firstly, the longer you delay being open with people, the longer it will take for their performance to develop. You know, candor delayed is performance denied. And, you know, you have to fix a performance issue in many cases. If people are stopped from performing, blocked by their own behavior, their potential may never be realized. You know, I find it kind of very interesting. I sit on the boards of companies these days. It kind of comes with age. And both of the companies that I'm involved in, the board is heavily involved in the question of next generation talent. But we don't take the view that it's only hiring the CEO that's our responsibility. We have talent reviews of in one company, which is about 27,000 people. The board annually looks at 300 people in terms of personal development plans for those folks. We look at career ladders and so on and so forth. And you know, one of the things that is really disheartening is when you get somebody who is potentially a candidate for the C-suite, so the one level below, senior exec. And they're in their 40s, late 40s, something like that, maybe even early 50s. And you go through, you know, do they have people intelligence? Do they have organization intelligence? Do they really understand the business? And then we come to strategic intelligence. And somebody says, you know, the problem is they're a really good operator, but they don't have a strategic bone in their body. That's the phrase that's often used. You know, they have no strategic capability. And you look and you say, gee, how do you know? They say, well, they've never shown it. You say, but it doesn't look as though they've ever had a job in which they would have to show it. Where have you expected to see it? And you realize that they never have. They've always been in a totally operational, time-focused job, kept in a box, and now they're thinking of a much bigger job, and nobody has thought to test whether they ever had this thing. So what do you do? So their career is a write-off. They're not going to get that job because nobody ever sat down and had the conversation that said, you know, you're great at this, but we have some questions about whether you can do this. And so let's work together to find an opportunity for you to demonstrate that you have this, which is the collaborative and the constructive thing. And could have built a different kind of career. In some cases, people's careers are a mere accident to the jobs that they got put into. And that's a pity because it leaves a lot of unrealized potential on the table. So candor denied is often potential unrealized. Finally, and I think this is just absolutely true, candor and integrity are linked. If you're not honest and open and straightforward with people, your integrity as a leader will be questioned. It is going to be questioned. And if there's one thing I've learned as a leader over many years, is that integrity is a binary variable. 0, 1, you have it, but you don't. And having it is critical to success as a leader, unless you're the major shareholder of the company, and then you can do what the hell you want. For anybody else, it's an important kind of issue. Now, problem with candor. It can be rejected. People may not accept that what you're saying is correct. Don't like it. That happens. You try to persuade them, you try to be convincing, go through all of that process. Maybe you succeed, and in some cases you don't succeed. And when you don't succeed, you have to scratch your head and say, well, I guess there is a difference of opinion. And since there is such a thing as rank, and I think it's going to be my opinion that counts, and I'm going to act on my judgment. I'm not concerned about acting on my judgment. The other problem with candor is probably this. I remember the very first person who ever reported to me. He was a great product manager. Problem was, he was sloppy. He missed deadlines. There were often inaccuracies in his work. He was just kind of undisciplined. Very creative, great drive, but just undisciplined. And I thought, it's about time I had a good conversation with him about this. So I sat down and I said, okay, Carlo, we need to talk about a few things. And I said, this. And I thought I was doing well. He listened, actually made a couple of notes. And then he said, are you finished? I said, yes. And he says, well, let me tell you something about you as a boss. You never set priorities. You're never clear about what it is you want me to do. You never give me much feedback on my work. And you never really show me what great looks like in terms of a marketing plan. I came away and I said, I think I've just had a candid conversation. but it goes both ways. And one of the realities of being candid with somebody is you must expect that they're going to be candid with you. And that's good, that's positive when that happens. Okay? But some people won't have the candid conversation because they're not prepared to have people give them that response. I think I kind of say candor may be gifted. It's like candy. It can be returned to you in another wrapper. It also means that sometimes in candid conversations, you have to say things that can be hurtful. I was originally planning to be a doctor in my career. I was at Guy's Hospital in London. I was in my first 2.5 years. I failed my exams. I was just about to resit them a second time. And my physiology professor came to see me and he said, Jeffrey, he said, I would advise you not to resit these exams. And I said, yes? He said, well, he said, you may pass them. I said, well, that would be good. And he said, no, it wouldn't. He said, in my view, if you became a doctor, you wouldn't like it. He said, and secondly, I think you'd kill more people than you help. You have to understand, I'm very absent-minded, I have a very bad memory, and I don't have very good eye-hand coordination, so, there are a lot of reasons why I shouldn't be a doctor. That I think was an extremely difficult conversation for him to have. By the way, I didn't like it at the time. I was quite upset. We later became extremely good friends. About 15 years later, after a couple of changes of career, when I completed my PhD, I sent him a note saying, well, at last I made it as a doctor, I'm in a profession that's unlikely to kill anybody. We have become good friends. But sometimes I think when you get engaged in these discussions, you have to be prepared to say things that are true, but aren't the things that you love to say to people. It's difficult to do. What I will say is this, and this was really my bottom line summary of my experience of some 3 years working on the GE turnaround. And those of you who have read there's a book called Workout, which is a description of these years. And what I saw was a leader and a leadership team who committed to changing the culture of an organization from one that was heavily bureaucratic, with lots and lots of layers of executives, many of whom didn't actually do anything except filter and censor and burnish and polish reports going from one area to the next, where communication about what was happening here, if it got to the top of the organization at all, got up in incredibly distorted fashion. And by the way, information from the top, by the time it got down to the bottom, had also been distorted as it went through layers of people. I saw that organization, which was slow, bureaucratic, and working on poor information, turned into a fast, agile, nimble, lean organization where people were communicating extremely well and in clear and plain language. Where good news traveled fast and bad news traveled even faster. Because they had built a culture of openness, the foundation of which was tough conversations, difficult conversations about difficult issues that people were prepared to have. I believe that a culture of candor is a source of sustainable competitive advantage. I think when you have it, you process information better, you get it moved around, you act on it. People are not second-guessing what other people want to hear. They're actually working at driving the business. Why don't tough conversations happen? Many reasons. A lot of us are conflict avoiders. Often we'll do anything for a quiet life. We may do it at home. You know, my stepfather, you know, for 25 years learned that turning his hearing aid off is a very good way to avoid having to listen to my mother. If I'd lived at home, I would have turned deaf as well. Okay? Just avoid it. Don't hear it. I don't want to know. Okay? There's much more pleasant and interesting things to do. I very seldom, I don't think I ever drive into the office saying, today's going to be an absolutely great day. I'm going to tell Professor so-and-so he's messing up because of the following reasons. You know, I may think I ought to talk to Professor so-and-so. I get into my office, my assistant comes in. I find 3 or 4 things to do that day that are much more fun than talking to Professor so-and-so. I do those things. I drive home at night and say, I ought to have talked to him today. I'll do it next week. And it goes on and on and on. We can avoid conflict. We often don't want to upset people who may be very good performers. They've got a weak spot. We don't want to deal with that weak spot because we don't want to distract them from doing what it is they're very good at doing. The problem, of course, is the more you ignore something, the harder it becomes to eventually deal with it. I have a friend who's a marriage counselor. She tells me the story of a couple who came into her office. They married 20 years. Their marriage was breaking down. And so she starts to talk with them about what's gone wrong. And, you know, so the stories start to come out. And one of her complaints was, you know, you always leave your dirty underwear on the floor at night. She says, I hate that. At night when we come to bed, says, I hate that. He says, I've always done that. We've been married 20 years. This is the first time you've ever said anything about it. Why didn't you say something about this? And she says, well, I used to be good when you were in bed. And, you know, after a while I just got used to it. She says, now things aren't that great in bed. Not used to it. Now I'm talking about it. Well, you know, it's very hard to deal with a habit that's been ingrained for 20 years. And it causes a lot of resentment when you eventually do talk about it. So you know, but we have to do it. There is a sense, by the way, that particularly when it comes to interpersonal skills or lack of maturity or arrogance or whatever, that time will take care of it. You know, how many times I've said, well, they're young, they're arrogant, yeah, they've got an MBA, you know, they'll grow out of it, they'll mature. Well, a long time can go by, and a lot of damage can be done before that natural maturing takes place. Whereas an intervention early can make a difference. Incidentally, if the person generally is a good performer, and they're getting bonuses and they're getting raises and all of those things, they're getting reinforcement that what they're doing is right. Whereas in fact there are some problems with what they're doing, but they're never getting correcting discussions. One of the things we know as managers, I don't know whether we'll ever get away from it, is we often put off those things that are important in order to deal with the things that are urgent. And in many cases, making these interventions, particularly around development, are tremendously important in the long run, but they're very seldom urgent. And as our workloads build up, and as we're addressing the urgent, we put off those important things. Finally, a lot of us, I would be one, have absolutely no difficulty dealing, particularly with performance issues where there are hard variables involved. So if there's a spreadsheet, if there's an accounting variance, if there's if production is not at 6 sigma levels, it's slipped to 3 sigma, whatever it is, we don't have difficulty having a tough conversation about what's gone wrong in the plan, what's gone wrong in the setup, etc. Where it's soft variables, where it relates to personality, where it relates to ethical behavior, where it relates to things that are hard to quantify or even objectify, we tend not to want to deal with them. And the only response I have to this is, get over it. This is why you exist as managers and leaders, is to deal with the soft stuff. If it's all objective, if it's all measured, you add no value. You're replaceable by computers. They cost a heck of a lot less, they won't ask for a raise next year, and I can replace them with something 4 times as powerful at half the price, 18 months from now. The reason we need leaders and managers is to make decisions and take actions on poorly defined data, in tough situations, without obvious programmed outcomes. In other words, to make subjective assessments and act on imprecise information. That's what we do as leaders. 2 other things just to leave you with. I've been doing a lot of research, and other colleagues over many years on an interesting question. And it has to do with what is the difference between people in organizations, executives in particular, who are known as talent developers or leader breeders. What is it they do that others who don't develop talent don't do? And by the way, you can find this out quite easily. I will go into a company, Manulife in Canada or HSBC, and I'll ask a question. I'll say, who are the executives in your company who are known, have a reputation for being leader breeders? You know, they're the ones you go to when you're looking for talent. You say, we need a good person to run this or run that. And they'll tell me. These people are known in companies. And then I'll say, well, who are the ones who are known as leader blockers? You know, nobody ever of any talent is found in their organization. You send them good people, and you never hear of them again. They disappear into a black hole. Okay. Oh yeah, we got a few of those. And what is it that they do differently? We find an interesting list. Firstly, leader breeders recruit and select high potentials, even if they're hard to handle. So they're not these people who say, well, I need to find somebody who can come in and fit with our organization. It's got to be a perfect fit from day one. Now the problem with fit is, and if you think about it, the culture you have today is the culture that was created as a result of everything you did yesterday. It may not be the culture you need for the future. It may not be the culture you need for the future. And if all you do is recruit people who fit beautifully, you may have no creative energy to change where you need to change. The